Okay, let's unpack this. We're starting today's deep dive with a story so ancient, it makes a truly breathtaking claim.
It's an incredible hook.
That one specific church in Africa holds the original biblical Ark of the Covenant.
Right. And that immediately sets the stage for where we're going. Deep into the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawhid Church, or the EOTC.
And for those listening who might not be familiar, you should know this is not some small niche faith.
Not at all. This is a massive institution. We're talking, what, up to 60 million members worldwide? And it holds such a foundational place in global Christianity.
Because it's one of the very few Christian churches in Africa that predates any European colonization.
Exactly. That context is just, it's crucial. This isn't a historical footnote. It's a major chapter of Christian history that, frankly, many Western narratives just leave out.
And the key to understanding this church is right there in the name. Tewahedo. It comes from the ancient Ge'ez language.
And Tewahedo means united as one, or being made one. And that right there brings us straight to their defining theology.
Their core identity. This church belongs to the Oriental Orthodox Communion, and its central belief is something called Miaphysitism.
Yes.
So if I'm getting this right, Miaphysitism is, it's the belief that Christ has one single, perfectly unified nature.
You've got it. The divine and human are completely united, not mixed, not confused, just one. A complete union.
Which is so different from the diaphysitism you see in Catholic or Eastern Orthodox churches.
Fundamentally different. That belief in two separate but united natures is the core of their theology.
And the consequence of that difference is huge. It's why the EOTC and other Oriental Orthodox churches completely reject the Council of Chalcedon from 451 AD.
Think about that. That's a theological disagreement that's over 1,500 years old.
Yeah.
It explains everything about why this church has had such a fiercely independent path.
Yeah.
It fosters this intense preservation of its own traditions.
Right. When your theology sets you apart, you have to become the guardian of your own ancient ways.
Exactly.
So speaking of ancient, let's trace those roots. To really anchor this, we have to go back to the 4th century.
That's the moment. That's when we see the Christianization of the powerful kingdom of Aksum.
Under King Ezana.
Under King Ezana. And while it wasn't overnight, the process was centralized, it was swift, and it really laid the groundwork for a national church.
The traditional founding story, though, it focuses on one person, Frumentius, which is a surprisingly international story for a church we think of as isolated.
It really is. Frumentius was a Syrian Greek. He was shipwrecked as a boy, rose up in the royal court, and he's the one credited with bringing the established priesthood and the sacraments to Aksum.
And they gave him a local title, right? Salama Kasate Burhan.
Which means Father of Peace, Revealer of Light. It shows you just how central he was to their story.
But this isn't just a story. We have physical evidence to back up this 4th century timeline. The sources mention a basilica dug up at Beta Samadhi.
Yes, and that 4th century basilica is, as far as we know, the earliest physical evidence of a formal church structure in all of sub-Saharan Africa. It anchors the whole claim right in the soil.
But the faith's earliest documented contact? You have to go back even further, to the Bible itself.
All the way back to Acts of the Apostles.
So the conversion of the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8, is that a symbolic anchor, or did it lay actual institutional groundwork?
It's more of a symbolic anchor, but a deeply powerful one. Acts 8 documents the baptism of a high official of the Candidate Queen by Philip the Evangelist.
So it confirms this incredibly early, direct connection to the apostles. It reinforces that claim to being an ancient, original form of the faith.
It does. Now, even with this unique identity, for centuries it was still administratively linked to another church.
Walk us through that history of dependence.
Well, for over 1,000 years, from the 4th century all the way until 1959, the EOTC was under the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria. They appointed their leaders.
1,600 years, that's a remarkably long time.
It's staggering. It wasn't until 1959 that the Coptic Pope Cyril VI granted them autocephaly.
Meaning full administrative independence.
Exactly. They could finally consecrate their own patriarch.
And this new independence, it immediately forces them to deal with some surprising external pressures. Let's pivot to the 16th and 17th centuries, because that's when they have a really forceful encounter with Europe.
Yes, the Jesuit interim. Portugal gets involved. They're in conflict with the Ottoman Empire, and they start Catholic missions in Ethiopia. And for a brief, frankly explosive period under Emperor Susenyos II, they actually succeeded.
They made Roman Catholicism the state religion.
They did. And you can imagine for this ancient Orthodox tradition, it was an absolute shock.
A devastating one, I'd imagine.
The backlash was immediate and violent. Suseños abdicated in 1632. His sons Fasilides took over, and he immediately restored Orthodox Christianity. The Jesuits were kicked out in 1633.
And then came the Symbolic Act. He ordered all the Jesuit books, they called them the Books of the Franks, to be burned.
In 1665, the message could not have been clearer. Get out and stay out.
Okay, so given that fierce rejection of Catholic influence, this is where our sources present a really fascinating twist. While the EOTC was violently rejecting Catholic missions in Africa, some scholars suggest the church was actually, maybe ironically, helping to challenge Catholic power back in Europe.
Its influence on the Protestant Reformation, it sounds totally counterintuitive, but this is one of the biggest aha moments in the material.
David Daniels' research suggests the Ethiopian church had a significant impact on Martin Luther.
Well, think about it. Luther needed legitimacy. He was looking for historical precedent, for moral authority outside of the Pope in Rome.
And he saw the EOTC as a true forerunner of Protestantism. It was ancient, it had direct ties to the apostles.
And it already rejected things like papal supremacy, purgatory, and indulgences. Plus, and this is crucial, it already practiced things Luther was fighting for.
Like communion in both kinds.
Bread and wine for everybody, not just the clergy.
Vernacular scriptures and married priests.
All of it. The EOTC was already doing it, and the connection wasn't just theoretical. There was a direct link. In 1534, an EOTC cleric named Michael the Deacon actually met with Martin Luther.
And he affirmed the Augsburg Confession, which is a foundational document of Lutheranism.
It is. And Luther's response was to invite Michael and the entire Ethiopian church to full fellowship. It was an invitation he didn't extend to many others. This ancient African church was giving historical and moral cover to the Reformation.
That just completely turns the standard Eurocentric view of the Reformation on its head.
It really does.
It's incredible. So that history is foundational. But to understand the church today, we have to look at the practices, the day-to-day spiritual life that makes it so distinct. And we have to start with that mind-blowing claim.
The Ark of the Covenant. The claim is that the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum houses the original Ark.
Now, to be clear, international scholars are generally skeptical.
They are, because only one designated guardian priest is ever allowed to see it, citing, biblical warnings about his power.
But whether the claim is verifiable or not, the idea of the Ark is central to every single church.
It's everything. And that idea is embodied in the tablet.
The tablet. Explain what that is.
The tablet is the heart of every church. It's a consecrated replica of the tablets in the Ark, a small slab of alabaster or marble or wood. And the sources stress this. It's the tablet that is consecrated, not the building itself.
And just like the original Ark, only priests can see or touch it.
Right. And during major feasts like Timkat, which is their Epiphany, the tablet is carried out in this joyful procession on the head of a priest. It's the portable spiritual soul of the community.
Beyond the tablet, what really stands out is the spiritual discipline, specifically the fasting.
The rigor is.
It's intense.
250 days a year, with 180 of those being mandatory for lay people. I mean, that is a level of commitment that's almost unheard of in modern Western Christianity.
It's a massive commitment. And it's a strict fast. No meat, no animal products at all, so a vegan diet, plus no sexual activity.
And this isn't just one fast. There's the Great Lent, the fast of the apostles.
And the 40-day fast of the prophets, which is sort of their version of Advent. This rigor seems to be part of a bigger pattern, these really pronounced similarities to Old Testament or Judaic practices.
It's a living bridge. You see it everywhere. Worshippers take their shoes off before praying, which is a direct echo of Exodus 3.5, standing on holy ground.
They also observe the Sabbath on Saturday, the seventh day, in addition to Sunday.
And inside the church, there's gender separation, men on the left, women on the right, and women are required to cover their hair with a sash.
Now, there's one key distinction to make here on circumcision.
Yes, this is important. While male circumcision is a very common cultural practice in Ethiopia, the church liturgy is explicit. It is not a religious requirement. They're very clear to separate it from the law of Moses.
They adopt the culture but maintain that theological distinction.
Exactly.
In terms of other unique practices, we should also mention the Dotera.
Right. These are itinerant laymen. They're trained as scribes, as cantors, but they sometimes also act as folk healers or even exorcists.
And exorcism is apparently quite common. There was a 2010 Pew Research study that found a striking figure.
I remember this. 74% of Christians in Ethiopia said they had either experienced or witnessed an exorcism.
And the process always involves commanding the spirit to leave in no other name than the name of Jesus.
Right. And finally, this preservation of the ancient, it extends right to their scriptures. The services are all in the ancient language of Yez.
And their biblical canon is bigger.
Much bigger, 81 books. It includes texts that other traditions left out, like the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch. Again, they are guardians of these profoundly ancient texts.
This incredible history, this independent identity, it makes what we have to talk about next, the recent political turmoil, all the more painful.
The modern institution has just faced relentless pressure. It really began with the 1974 Ethiopian Revolution.
When the military junta, the Derg, took power.
Yes, the EOTC was disestablished as the state church, and the new government nationalized all church property. That just fundamentally changed the church's power and its wealth.
And the lowest point of that era was what happened to the patriarch at the time, Abuna Theophilos.
He was arrested in 1976, and then in 1979, secretly executed.
The fallout just continued. In the 90s, when Eritrea gained independence, their church split off.
The Eritrean Orthodox Tawሕዶ Church was granted autocephaly in 1993. And then internally, after 1991, the church went into a 26-year schism with a breakaway church that was in exile.
They did manage to reunify in 2018, which led to a very strange situation.
Very unusual. For a time, they had two patriarchs at once, Abune Mercurios and Abune Matthias.
But that unity didn't last long. The instability came roaring back during the Tigray War from 2020 to 2022.
And that led to another major rupture in 2021, the formation of the Tigrayan Orthodox Tawሕዶ Church.
And the grievances here were deeply political. Clergy in Tigray felt the main EOTC synod was aligned with the federal government.
And that it was silent about the atrocities happening in Tigray. We're talking about massacres right near that sacred church in Axum, the bombing of ancient monasteries like Debre Damo.
It was a crisis of conscience, and the sources note that while the synod was quiet, the patriarch Abuna Matthias, who is Tigrayan himself, he broke ranks.
He did. He went public and called the conflict a genocide, and said his own attempts to speak out had been suppressed.
And the conflict didn't stop when the war ended. In January 2023, there was an attempt to overthrow Abuna Matthias from within.
By a new synod formed in the Oromia region. This led to the immediate excommunication of 3 archbishops. And when the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, tried to step in and mediate.
The Holy Synod basically told him to back off, citing the separation of church and state. They accused him of meddling.
The tension got so high that the government shut down social media sites, Facebook, Telegram, for 5 months.
Wow.
An agreement was eventually reached, but it just shows the immense political pressure the church is constantly under.
It's a vivid picture of how the spiritual life of a nation can get violently tangled up with its political fate.
Especially when that church holds such foundational cultural power.
So, to bring this all together, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawሕዶ Church is this unbroken chain of unique, ancient Christianity. It's a tradition marked by incredible spiritual discipline, these deep Judaic overlaps, and a fiercely independent identity that is constantly being forced to negotiate modern political pressures.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture for you, the listener, consider the profound spiritual and cultural meaning of something like the Tablet, or a holy site like Axum. These are the very things that define the EOTC's heritage. So what is this recent history? A history marked by war, cultural erasure, and deep internal schisms driven by politics. What does that tell you about the complex and often precarious role of ancient religious institutions in our modern world?
A question definitely worth dwelling on as you consider what it takes for a 1,600-year-old institution to survive. And that's where we'll wrap up this deep dive.